Today we've got a really good topic. I'm seeing a lot of good songs come up. Life's a happy song. I love it. Happy, rocky theme. Oh, good ones, good ones. So tonight we're going to be talking about choice boards and menus. This is probably one of my favorite topics, and especially when we look at the portrait of a Nevada learner and bringing in some of those skills and attributes that we want students to have, and when we provide choice, how we're really setting them up for success later in life. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Kim Loomis. I used to be the director for online and blended learning down in Clark County School District down in Las Vegas. I did retire in 2019, just prior to COVID, to be able to follow my passion, which is online and blended learning post-COVID, and working with all kinds of districts across the nation. Matter of fact, I'll be in Naperville next week. I'm in Texas probably about 2 weeks from now. I did write a book. It's called Think Outside the Box, which I ask you guys to do all the time. Think outside the box. Try some of these things in your classroom. Like tonight, you're going to hear a little bit about choice boards and menus. Try it out. It may not have been something that you've ever tried before, but why not try it? My background is 10 years as a high school math teacher, building administrator, high school reform, curriculum and instruction director. And like I said, I finalized as the director for online and blended learning here in Clark County. So tonight's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the portrait of Nevada learning, but really spend a lot of time talking about student choice and a pedagogy that I absolutely love, which is choice boards and menus. As a matter of fact, later tonight, you'll get an opportunity to see some of the choice boards and menus that I use in my workshops as I work with other teachers and districts across the nation. And then we'll talk about how to design them. And those of you that are interested in taking what we learned tonight and embedding that and applying it into your classroom, you can go into the Canvas workshop and get those additional 5 professional development hours. And we'll talk more of that towards the end of tonight. So let's go ahead and we'll start with a chat question. So over in chat, what I'd like you to do is think about what is a skill or possibly a mindset that you think that all Nevada students need to embrace. What is a skill or a mindset that you think all Nevada students need to embrace? Critical thinking, love it. Grit, some good stuff popping up over here. Not to give up, exactly. Time management, the ability to adapt, challenges that are fun, perseverance, critical thinking, love it, problem solving, independence. Seeing some really good stuff, growth mindset, problem solving, all these things that are popping up. And that's kind of how the portrait of a Nevada learner came about. Is that was the question. It said, hey, what do we think all students in Nevada need to know and be able to do? And this is all beyond academics, because we all believe that the academics are core and they're important. But what are some of these skills and mindsets? Like, you guys brought up, critical thinking, grit, perseverance, communication, collaboration, leadership, all of those things, the understanding that, as Teresa just said, my education is up to me, right? That's where we started with the Portrait of a Nevada Learner. About 2-3 years ago, we've asked this question to a couple people, and we really went through a process of developing that portrait of a Nevada learner. And when we did, it was finalized in May of 2023. I just posted, because I was just reading the U.S. Department of Education, the Educational Tech Plan. And on page 17, is a highlight. There's a side box. I loved it. It's side box about Nevada and the way that we put together our portrait of a Nevada learner. So in this big national document, our little state of Nevada got a big plug, and I was so excited because it really goes back to, we used a community to decide what we really wanted. We brought a bunch of people together in October of 2022, finalized the document in May of 23, and it kind of looks like this. It says, hey, look, what we want to do is we want to match the academics with the skills. And notice some of these skills are the things that you guys came up with, like the critical thinking, the flexibility, the leadership skills, time management. These are some words that I just a moment ago saw in chat. So not only do you believe it and put it here in chat, but as we went across the state and we met with parents and business leaders, even kids themselves, we said, what are some skills that you want to learn? And so these were some of the things that we did, was we put these skills out there, and we said, all right, this is what our portrait of an Nevada Learner is going to be. It's not going to be another class in our daily schedule, but what we want to do is we want to create classroom environments that allow students to practice not only math, science, social studies, fine arts, PE, world language, electives, but we want to actually do a pedagogy that helps them build resilience, helps them build their emotional intelligence, helps them, exactly what Teresa said over in chat a moment ago, helps them to realize that their education and their learning is really up to them and how much effort and stuff that they put forward. So we actually put together a document for the Portrait of a Nevada Learner. So in the Portrait of a Nevada Learner, there are 4 questions that kind of come up when we think about a learner. And they think, like, how will I grow? Basically empowerment. Exactly what Teresa was saying a moment ago, that my education is up to me. I'm empowered to sit back and do nothing, or I'm empowered to take it to the whole next level. Another question is, how do I connect? How do I sustain relationships with not only my peers in my classroom, but also within the community? And so we call that the connection. The third area is impact. How do we make an impact in today's society? How do we make an impact starting small within my classroom? And how can I take that a little bit bigger? So what we're thinking about is, how do we create experiences and put an environment together that helps students feel like they can thrive, right? So that they can have these shared values. So the document itself actually is just a 1-page document. It takes these 4 concepts: empowering, thinking about reflecting on their learning, thinking about curiosity and self-awareness, and striving for balance in their life. Connecting, which of course, as you know, is much like the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking. And what they also have here is showing empathy and respect towards other people and individuals and cultures. Impacting is making sure that it's purposeful impact, that I'm a critical thinker and I'm being creative in my problem solving, and understanding that I have a civic engagement and a responsibility to myself, my community, my family, my classroom. So thinking about that impact I can make in all of those environments. And our 4th area there is thriving. And in thriving, we really talk about staying resilient and courageous, and really just thinking about intellectual agility, being able to unlearn, just as hard I know as it is learning, but unlearning and relearning and adapting to different opportunities in our school and our community as well. And then thinking about the integrity. And this, to me, it really hits home, especially as we live in this world where artificial intelligence has really come in, and kids understanding, well, what is not only academic integrity, but just integrity as a person as I move forward in life. So again, we're going to take it and we're going to do a breakout. So I'm going to put you guys into breakouts. A moment ago, I asked you in chat what skills and the mindsets you thought were important. But when you go into your breakout rooms today, what I want you to talk about is, which one of the skills and mindsets do you really think are going to be tough to actually develop or provide time for practice in your classrooms? All right. Well, thank you guys. Those of you that are just now joining us, what we were talking about is, just go ahead and throwing up in chat if you got something that came up in your group. Grit, yes, good one. Lots of different things. And the thing about the Portrait of a Nevada Learner is sometimes it's giving students the opportunity to practice. Because if we don't give them the time to practice, then they can't develop a skill. And I'm a true believer that each of us have the 16 habits of mind. And one of the 16 habits of mind is grit. And that's in us. But if we don't get a chance to practice it, then we never develop that skill to its fullest potential. So I think it becomes really important for us to make sure that we're providing environments where students can practice some of these skills, like empathy and grit and just knowing how to care for each other. I know that sometimes we think that these are things that families should do, but believe me, we should also do them as well in our classrooms. So let's talk about student choice. So when we think about student choice in the learning process, now I know that I am a big, big visual learner. So I learn by taking tons of notes and I put them in color. You should see me. If I've ever seen me take notes, it's always in color, because to me, it's a very, very visual thing. So when you're thinking about your students, and again, over in chat, how often do your students have a chance or a choice in the learning process? where they can choose, oh, I can read a book instead of maybe watching this video, or I can go over and work with my teacher instead of working with my peers. So how often does that happen? Is it all the time? Is it none? Is it a little? What is it? I see a lot of sums. Less than before. Yeah, I know. And part of it is, again, the helping kids with their new behaviors and new curriculums. Thank you, Shanna. I know we have a lot of new curriculums out there that are kind of guiding some of that. So when we provide students choice, they have a little bit of ability to choose between, if I want to have a story read to me, I can put it on the computer, and the computer can read the story to me, or I can read it, or I can have it read aloud by my teacher or my peers. So thinking about what are some of the best ways, and I'm talking about the learning process, right? I'm a visual learner. I like hands-on. How can I engage? What are some of those things that we can give them choice in? So tonight, that's what we're really going to be talking about, is how we can give students choice. Now, I'm a true believer. Choice could be two things. So as we're going through everything tonight, I want you to start thinking about, how can I give students a choice between maybe working with me or working independently, or maybe working with their peers or working on the digital content? How can we give them some choice in that learning process? Because that's what we'll be talking about tonight. Because in the traditional classroom, most often we control it. We're taking complete control of the learning, and we're doing this same pace, same place, same time. Every student's reading the same short story at exactly the same time. We have a dedicated day that we complete questions on the story, and it might be in that same day, but the questions are all set there, and we might test on that same day. And we use this I do, we do, you do, assess. It's very passive learning. There's not much choice in there. And especially, and we heard about transient students in the chat, but also when we have absent students, if this is the way that they're learning all the time in passive, then when we're not up in front and we're teaching and a kid's absent, they have no way to make that up. They miss the I do, we do, you do. So what's their choice now? How are they going to make up that learning? So start thinking about, how can I provide choices, not only in my classroom, but even in that makeup process, so that we can get away from that passive learning. And so that's going to take a shift in practice. Now, right now, everything that's teacher centered, you're doing lesson plans, but oftentimes it's that same place, same time. So what we want to do is start thinking about lessons. Where can I put some choice of activities into that learning process? And instead of me always delivering the content, how can I use a digital partner to deliver some of that content? Those of you that have been with me, you know that I'm a true believer that digital content can deliver DOK levels 1 and 2, that basic level stuff, so that we could stretch our students to the higher order thinking. If I'm always stuck down here in 1 and 2, then I'll never get the kids to that stretch. So we want to start thinking about how I can partner with digital content. And assigning assignments and assessing students always was coming from us, but in a student-centered classroom, what we want to do is turn that a little bit on its head. We might have a choice of assignments. We might say, you can do this electronically, or you could do it as a worksheet, or you could do it individually, or you could do it as a pair. So having them have some responsibility in that activity to practice grit and perseverance, right? And also what we want to do is not only just us assessing our students, we want peers assessing our students, or them self-assessing themselves and looking at their own data and making goals and those types of things. So we want to shift that practice more to, and as I saw in chat earlier, so that the students feel that they have a role in their own education. And we are just the guide. We're the guide on the side. We're the lead learner. We're in there with them. We're going to create the path, but it's their journey. So we want to make sure that on that journey that they're taking, that we give them a little bit of choice and some self-centered around them. So what does that look like? Well, instead of knowledge acquisition being provided by the teacher, it's really more constructed by the students, where we're giving them choices of thinking of like, okay, you could watch this video, or you could read this book, or you could have this conversation with your peers. So thinking about how we want students to construct that knowledge. And instead of being passive receivers, we really want to get them actively engaged and talking about the content and taking ownership of that academic vocabulary in your subject area. So it takes us off from being the leader and the authority to being more of that facilitator, that guide on that side, by doing a lot of teaching by walking around, because we've released some of the learning. And instead of obtaining correct answers and always looking for who's got the right answer, them raising their hands, we're going to ask them to pose questions. Ask them to think about, yeah, what did you learn when you had this mistake, when you didn't get the right answer? So we want them learning from their errors. And that goes back to assessment. Instead of just grading all the time, maybe we should have a continuous self-assessment and have this ongoing feedback, so students are not only thinking about their learning, but we're thinking about their learning and their peers are thinking about the learning. And we have more of a collaborative, supportive classroom instead of a competitive who got the best score type classroom. So we're moving from this teacher-centered to more of a student-centered when we bring in the Portrait of a Nevada Learner. So I like to say that blended learning, or personalized, I like to use the word personalized, blended personalized learning, has these three pieces. It takes the wisdom of the teacher. You all are very, very smart and you work way too hard. So what we want to do is we want to set up a situation where we're taking your wisdom and we're going to match it with the adaptability of technology. Allow it to cover DOK level 1 and 2, that low level thinking. We can break out and have the kids work on that. And we could also break out and have the kids work peer to peer so that we can create a personalized learning environment. So being a math teacher for 10 years, you heard me say that at the beginning. I wrote this in a very simple math sentence: the wisdom of the teachers plus the adaptability of technology so that we can create a personalized learning space for each and every individual student, so that they're taking care of the learning. They're owning their learning. It's not us owning the learning or the classroom owning the learning, but the individual personalized student are owning the learning. Now you can see I use these three icons, and I think that these icons become important. Teacher with the heart, because there's no way technology is ever going to replace the heart, our technology, and our student. So if you start thinking about your lesson plan, start thinking about them in 1/3. 1/3 of the time, when can I release to the digital content? iXL, iReady, Khan Academy, even a video that I personally have developed, right? Releasing the learning to digital content. And 1/3 of the time, we want to release the learnings to the students so that they're actively engaged, maybe in hands-on, small group, peer-to-peer, really engaging, high interactive in the classroom. Now, notice that 2/3 of the time, you're off the stage. You get 1/3 of the time to think about directed learning, Socratic seminars, small groups. This is where playlists, menus, and choice boards come in, because we can guide that learning from the other 2/3 with those playlist, choice boards, and menus. So when they're in those other 2/3, we get to do the fun thing, which I call teaching by walking around. We get to do that small group if we need to pull a small group, or we're looking over students' shoulders, asking them questions. What are they learning today? How far are they getting? Do they need some help? And we're getting a better relationship with those students when we use that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now you'll notice that it's releasing to the students 2/3 of the time. And this goes back to the Portrait of a Nevada Learner. The Portrait of the Nevada Learner, really, if you look at it, it's really based on a lot of social emotional learning. It's based on being able to self-manage. What you guys said a moment ago. It's really being, able to be perseverance, to have grit, to do some critical thinking, to make responsible decision makings. That's when we release to our students, they get those opportunities to practice those skills. Now we need to set them up with, what does that look like? So we might have a social contract in our classroom, or we might have a situation where we've talked through, before I release to small groups, these are the things that we need to do. This is what a leader does. This is how you pose questions, helping them through those types of things so that you can, as a teacher, become the guide on the side. You are creating that path to success. Earlier, I said that I love to say that you're creating a journey through a jungle. You're creating the path, but it's their journey. They have to take each of those steps. And so what we want to do is we want to create that path to success and have them have the ability to take those small steps, maybe pulling in a small group as needed, or maybe even working with a one-on-one student, especially those kids that were absent yesterday, and we just got to get them caught up. So if we're always on the stage, we need to step back so that we can take care of those types of things. So I got a question for you. We're going to go to a breakout room, but I want you to think about this. I just talked a lot about releasing the learning to students, and choice will allow us to do that. So how does releasing the learning to our students, how does that align with the Portrait of a Nevada Learner? So I'm going to go ahead and send you guys back out to breakout rooms, give you another 5 minutes to talk about that. So tonight, as we go forward, I haven't even really talked about choice boards and menu. We've talked about student choice and what that can look like in our classrooms, but let's go ahead and think about what is a choice board. So first thing I want to ask you guys is, have you ever done a choice board? Have you ever done a playlist? Have you ever done a menu? So I've given you a couple of examples here, and I'll put the links in here. So if you want to go look at these are some that I do for professional development. But if you've done a playlist or you've done a choice board or a menu, throw it up into chat. So say, yep, I've done playlists, or yep, I've done a menu. Yep, I've done a choice board. If nothing's coming up in chat, then that gives me a pretty good idea that we're still not there. Oh, thank you, Alana. I love it. You've done a menu. Somebody says yes, Kelly. So yes, on which piece? So yes, menus and choice boards. Great, Krista. We could lean on you. Christina looks like she's done some menus. These are nice. Nice to see that some people have done these things. We actually had a whole session on playlists in the fall. So some of you that have been with me should have at least, Tommy, heard of them, heard of playlists, but some of you even implemented playlists in your classroom. Good. Thank you guys so much for throwing those up. That gives me a pretty good idea of where we're at. So when we think about playlists, because in playlists, you can put choice inside a playlist, which I really like as well. But when we think about choice boards and we think about menus, we're thinking about looking at different ways for students to learn. So when we think through what does it look like in a choice board or a menu, we're trying to create an instructional tool that can foster independence. What we were just talking about in our breakout rooms, right? Giving those students an opportunity to practice some of those skills and attributes that we want them to have. But it also allows for choice. I don't know about you, when I was raising my two daughters, I always had a heck of a time getting them dressed. But if I gave them choice, if I said, look, do you want to wear this pink shirt or do you want to wear the white shirt today? Boom, I could get them out the door, because once they got choice, they felt like they had some type of empowerment, and they only had a choice between pink and white. So we could do the same thing. You could either read this article or you could watch this video, or you can come to a small group with me as a teacher, or you can go work with your peers. But what we want to do is differentiate based on needs, right? Because sometimes we know there are some students in our classroom that are better readers than others. So maybe giving them a choice of reading is something that one student might have, but if you have a student that's a poor reader, then that's not even really a choice for them, right? So we have to start thinking about having different choices so that we can differentiate basing on the need, while we're empowering our students through choice, right? And helping them take that ownership. A moment ago, we talked about helping them take that ownership and that agency of their own learning and of their own education. So when we think through a choice board, and this is a 9x9 choice board, this is not mine, this is Casey Bell's, you can look it up, and matter of fact, it's going to be in our Canvas course. So this is a 9x9. Sometimes people call it the bingo boards or the tic-tac-toe boards, and you can see what Casey Bell has done here with this tic-tac-toe. She outlines a variety of activities that are going to get to an important targeted learning goal, and the students have choices that appeal to them the most. So first thing she did to make it really easy is she numbered the boxes 1 through 9. Once we number the boxes, then we could ask our kids, what box numbers are you doing? We've done this before in other classes. I've seen people are like, oh my God, I forgot to number. It was really, really tough. But by numbering them, and we can really ask kids, okay, what 3 boxes are you going to work on? And you'll notice in this particular one, there are blue boxes. Boxes 1 through 4, students have choices of different ways of learning. And then the yellow boxes, 6 through 9, are another way of, in this case, they happen to be assessments. They're creating a video or creating a comic book or they're creating something. So that's their assessment. And everybody has to do the middle one, which was write the paragraph summary. So here the teacher is still directing the learning. We're asking kids to get some knowledge, either in the blue up there, and then we want to assess that knowledge, and everybody's going to do the one in the middle. So again, we're directing it, but we're giving students a little bit of choice. Now, you do not have to create a 9 by 9 grid to do that. Choice, just like I talked about, pink and white, can be 2 things, or you can make a 3-box, 3 by 1, and say, pick one of these 3 different ways that you can obtain knowledge. Because there are only 3 ways, when you think about it, to get new knowledge or new content to our students. We could do it, which takes the learning process to be more of an audio-visual. Some other learners aren't so audio-visual, right? Or we can have a textbook do it, where we ask the kids to do some reading. But then again, we have kids at different reading levels, so it makes it really tough when we make every kid read the exact same article. Or we can have the technology, which has a lot of multimedia, drag and drops, videos. It can read stories to us. So there's lots of different ways to introduce new content. So as you're making your choice board, think about the different ways you can get new content into students' hands. And so again, it could be your choices: come to a small group with the teacher, or read this article, or watch this video, or listen to this podcast. Lots of different ways that we can make that happen. Now, here's some examples of choice boards and menus in formats. Like a learning menu is much like a restaurant menu. You have appetizers, main course, and desserts. And you might have 3 choices of appetizers. And if you look at the Kim's choice board, I think it's a Mexican one, where they had 3 different videos that they can choose to go watch. And they only asked them to watch one of the videos. Now, you got high flyer kids out there, they're going to watch all 3. And that's great. That's why we give them all 3, because guess what? They get deeper into the learning. But then you could say, here's the main course. These are some things that I'd like you to do. I'd like you to look at this article, and you can go back and you can look at the one that I have there for you. And then you could have choice in dessert. If you look at mine, I didn't have a choice in the dessert. Everybody was doing the same dessert. So your choice doesn't have to be everywhere. And your tic-tac-toe board doesn't have to be a 9 by 9. It could be a 2 by 2. It could be pick one of these 3 things. It doesn't have to be. I love the tic-tac-toe because it's something that kids know, but that means I, as a teacher, have to come up with 9 different things for students to do. So don't force yourself to get to that 9 level. But what I want you to start thinking about is where you can give students choice. Now, we talked about how you can give them choice in content. So there's lots of different ways students can consume new knowledge: text, video, audio, multimedia, teacher-led small groups. There's lots of different ways that you can make choices in how they get new content. You can also think about student choice and process. That's how they apply the new content. Kids need to practice, right? They could do it on a worksheet. They could do it in a digital content. They can work with a partner. You can have offline duties, online duties. It's just, what do you want them to do so that they're applying or practicing the new knowledge that was gained? Another way you can do choice is during the product, and that's how they're going to be assessed. And you saw in the Casey Bell one, she had lots of different ways that the kids could be assessed. Instead of taking a single test, we could have a single test, but we could also have them create something. We could have them design something. We could have them work a peer-to-peer and create some type of project and have some type of rubric on grading that, have them self-grade. A moment ago, we talked about students taking ownership, self-grading, have peer grades before I grade. Right? And I'm a big fan. If you haven't seen them, the single point rubrics, absolutely love them. Now, another way you can do choice, and I've seen this in great classrooms where they talk about different settings, where a student can, set and work individually, or they can work in a small group, or they have a beanbag in the corner that they can go work at. And this is just where you think about what the environment could look like. Oftentimes we don't give the choices there, but we definitely can give choices in content, process, and product. So what type of task can we give kids choice in? Well, these are tons of them. The same thing that you do in your lessons. And if you're a big fan of artificial intelligence, you could ask artificial intelligence, I'm gonna teach a lesson on this concept today. What are some choices of getting content to my kids? What are some videos I could use? What are some articles I can use? What are some books I can use? Is there a podcast that I can use, right? Can I put them in pair practices? And if I put them in a pair practice, what do I want them to practice on? Is it an online practice? Is it an offline practice? Do we want them to create products like videos, infographics, podcasts? So it's the same stuff that we would normally do, but we're going to give kids choices. Remember, two makes a choice. Two, if we give kids the opportunity to make a choice between reading or watching a video, that's a choice. I know most of our kids would watch the video, but still give them that choice, because there are those high flyers out there that might do both. So when you're thinking through of suggested activities that you could put choices in, remember, it doesn't have to be that 9x9, right? It could be 3 boxes and say pick one. As you saw in my playlist, and I put them up in the chat just a moment ago, even my playlist had choices in it. If you were in elementary, do this. If you're in middle school, do this. If you were high school, do this. So there were different choices in there. You can see the 9x9 could be a 2x2, or it could be 3 boxes across the top and say, pick one of these 3 boxes to do. Just like you see in the meals there on the main dish, they either picked scenario 1, 2, or 3. You'll notice under the dessert was just a single dessert. There was no choice there. So choice doesn't have to be everywhere, but it should be somewhere. So throw up in chat, how might choice change student motivation? How might choice change student motivation? Yeah, buy-in, increased engagement. Yeah, feeling more confident, learning the ways that they feel most comfortable. I love it. More buy-in, excitement, ownership, right? All of these words that you're saying there lets them play to their strengths. All of this is exactly what the Portrait of Adult Learner is all about. It's giving them power. I love it, Lorraine. That's a great way to do it, right? Getting them to showcase their strengths, putting them in their comfort zone. You guys have great words. I just get to say them. They're awesome. Yeah. And again, choice doesn't have to be everything. It could be 1 or 2 things, right? Creating that ownership and having them, lead by their strengths. So as you're thinking about designing choice boards and menus, again, choice starts with 2. When you only have one thing every day, same people at the same place at the same time at the same assessment, there's no choice. So start thinking in your backwards design. What is a desired result you want? What are some of the tasks that they could do to get there, to gain the knowledge? And how could I actually think about assessing those knowledges? What are different ways that they can assess it? Could they write a paragraph? Could they draw a picture? Could they do a podcast? Whatever those, think about that culminating assessment, and then start thinking about, okay, what's the learning task that we can get here? And this is where I love, again, artificial intelligence, because I can go into, an artificial intelligence and say, this is my standard today. Can you help me write it as a learning task? Can you help me identify some tasks that I can have the kids do? Hey, I like that you say take a video. Can you recommend a couple of videos? That's what I love about artificial intelligence, and thinking through what that could look like. And it can help you with creating different choices. So in the Canvas course, you're going to see lots of different ways and options that you can create the choices. So there's, from Guy Miller, he's given us some paper PDFs that you can put together a menu, and you could do like we've done, or you could even borrow the one that I've given you in Google. Just delete out my stuff, put in your stuff. Think about appetizers, main dish, side dish, desserts. You do not have to go to a full 9x9. It could be a 3-grid box. It says, hey, you can do this or you can do this. I actually like the may do must do's. You must do these 3 things. And then when you're done with these 3 things, you may do one of these 3 things. That alone now gives the students choice. Yeah, they had to do or must do those 3 things, but then they got choice down here at the bottom. Now, if you're big into technology and you like interactive slides, I love interactive slides. Slide Mania has some really good ones that talks about choice boards. And again, all of these resources can be found inside the Canvas course. So as you're designing and you're thinking about, think of the single concept or the learning objectives that you want to do. Create an easy to follow format. A 9x9 grid might not be really good for second graders. It's too many choices, right? Take it down to 2 choices. You must do these two things. You may do one of these two things. Think about what you want to do and what are some must do's, what are some may do's. Help yourself with, easing into it by numbering the boxes and communicating with the others. So I can say, I'm working on, especially if I'm a high school student, I'm working on box number 8. And then they could say, is anybody else working on box number 8? Let's put a small group together over in that corner. And color variation helps tremendously as you guys are doing this, because you can say, all the blues are how you're gaining knowledge, all the yellows are how we're going to assess it, and everybody's going to do that star one in the middle, especially for the high school. Again, think about the different ways you can differentiate content, process, and product. You don't have to do all three. Just think about which one do you want to provide choice in? Do you want to provide choice in how kids consume knowledge? Do you want to provide choice in how kids apply new knowledge? Do you want to provide choice in how kids show that they've mastered that new knowledge? So thinking through, where do you want to provide choice? You might have some what we call imperative or non-negotiables. That means everybody must do these. That's like that center box on your tic-tac-toe. You might have some must-dos, right? Or what we call negotiables, at least one of these things, like the appetizers. Here's 3 different videos that you can watch. Pick one. But then you might have some optionals, like we talked about the may do, the must do list. Everybody has to do the non-negotiables at the top, but you have an option at the bottom. You can do these when you get done. I'm a big fan of always having something to do when kids get done early. Otherwise, we end up with a management problem, right? So here's an example. Here's a very, very small, easy example to follow. There are only 2 options on learning new content. I like to use a learn, grow, show. To me, you're going to see inside of our Canvas course, you're going to see learn, grow, show all over the place, because there's got to be a way that you learn new content. You want to grow or practice that new content, and then you want to show or demonstrate via a product the knowledge that's been gained. So I've created a learn, grow, show, very easy here, small choice board. So they need to learn, and they have 2 options. They can come to a teacher small group, or they can do it in a digital option. They need to grow, meaning practice the new knowledge. They can do it independently, or they can do it as pair work. So we've got option 1 and 2 and learn. We got 2 options, task A and task B, and grow. And then the last one, show, is going to be a knowledge check that everybody's going to do. There is no choice in that one. And it might be something that I put together as a quiz or an exit out the door. Now, notice the very bottom of this box. It says you got extra time and you finish early. Then I want you to work on, and I can put something there. And if I wanted to, I can put a couple things there and say work on one of these. Again, another way to put some choice in it. But you can see that this does not have a whole lot of choice. It's not a 9x9 grid, but a very small grid to help kids get some choice in there. So what I'm going to suggest is look at the various choice boards and the menus that you're going to see inside the Canvas course. And then think about where in your class, content, process, product, can you give some kids some choice? Not every day, but sometimes, can I do that? Think of a lesson that's coming up, or remix a lesson that you've done in before, and think about how to release some of that learning with student choice so students can practice some of those portrait of a Nevada learner skills and mindsets. Now, again, there are lots and lots of different options that you can see there in the Canvas course. So spend some time in there in the Canvas course. Everybody got enrolled into the Canvas course. That doesn't mean that everybody has to do the Canvas course. The Canvas course is optional. But if you're interested in trying choice boards or menus, or just choice in general, it doesn't even have to be a whole board in your classroom, throw a yes up in there. If you're not sure and you're thinking about it, then throw a maybe in there. But if you're like, dude, this is way too much, I can't do it, throw a no. I love it. I got a couple maybes, got some yeses. Good.